Welcome back to the deep dive. Look, before we even get into the weeds today, I really need you to do something for me. Hit that like button and subscribe to the show right now.
Yeah, please do.
I'm serious, do it now, because the algorithm absolutely does not like what we are about to talk about. If you want to stay in the loop for these kinds of, hard-hitting analyses, you need to be locked in. We are touching the third rail today.
That is really not an exaggeration. Today isn't just a regular review. It's honestly a bit of a wake-up call. We're looking at a text that is just explosive.
Totally.
It's an ebook with a title so long and so aggressive it almost feels like a dare. It's called Feminism, Lies and Lies, Girl Math, Women's Logic, A Billion Killed Children, a Communist Catabolic Civilization-Ending Hate Movement.
Yeah, I saw that title on the prep sheet and I just thought, well, the author definitely isn't trying to make friends at a Brooklyn dinner party.
Not even a little bit. It's written by Conrad Riker. And look, we usually talk about, different perspectives here on the show, but Riker frames this as a straight up red pill moment. He actually says in the preface, and I'm paraphrasing here, that if you're the kind of guy who still believes the world is fair or that our institutions serve the truth, you should probably just close the book and go back to watching Netflix.
So basically, this is for the guys out there who feel like the game is rigged, but they can't quite figure out the rules.
Exactly. It's for men who feel the rot but just can't see the source of it. And I want to be super clear up front here. To get the full arsenal of facts, the charts, and the citations we're about to discuss, you really need to go to Amazon Kindle or Google Play Books and buy this ebook immediately.
Yeah, because what we're doing today is really just the tip of the spear.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's get into the central thesis.
Yeah.
Because Riker isn't just saying, feminism is annoying or I don't like the new Star Wars movies. He's arguing something way more structural, right?
Right. He argues that feminism is not a movement for equality at all. He literally calls it a dominance system.
A dominance system.
Yeah. A female supremacy movement disguised as justice. But the core concept you need to understand, the one that threads through this entire book, is this idea of the catabolic society.
Catabolic. Now, that's a biological term, isn't it? Like, if you're into bodybuilding, you want to be anabolic, which is building muscle. So catabolic is the opposite.
Precisely. In biology, a catabolic state is when a body starts consuming its own muscle tissue for energy because it's starving.
It eats its own strength.
It eats its own strength just to survive another day. And Riker argues that our civilization is literally doing that. It's eating itself alive.
Wow.
We are consuming the foundations of the West, things like merit, logic, survival instincts, the things that built the muscle of society in the first place, just to fuel a temporary state of female emotional comfort.
So we're essentially burning the support beams of the house just to keep the fireplace warm for a few more hours.
That is the perfect analogy. And Riker says this starts incredibly early. He introduces this concept he calls the maternal matrix.
This is the shift he describes from a father-based society to a mother-based one.
Correct. It's a shift away from fatherhood, which historically represents law, structure, challenge, into a distorted version of motherhood that prioritizes absolute safety and consensus above everything else.
And he gives some wild examples of this sort of nursery mindset. The one that really stuck out to me in the book was that school in Canada,
Oh, right.
they banned the game of tag. They
Yes.
actually banned tag. And not because kids were breaking bones or running into traffic, but because the principal said it created winners and losers, and that caused emotional distress.
It's what Riker calls the safety cult. And his point isn't just, oh, kids are soft these days. His point is that by removing winning and losing from childhood, you are quite literally removing the concept of reality.
Because life has winners and losers.
Exactly. You are training a developing brain to believe that failure is a systemic error rather than a personal result. You're teaching them that if they lose, the game itself was wrong.
It's completely shielding them from the feedback loop of life. But Riker argues this obsession with emotional safety is actually replacing physical safety, like actual survival.
That's where it gets genuinely dangerous.
Yeah.
He cites Swedish libraries introducing adult napping stations. Or, even more alarming, Norway trying out what they call hug cops.
Hug cops. I mean, please tell me that's just a metaphor for a friendly neighborhood watch.
I wish it was. It is not a metaphor. These are actual officers trained to empathize and de-escalate with soft speech first rather than assert authority.
You're kidding.
No, they are trained to approach a potential physical threat like a mother approaching a crying child.
And how did that work out for them?
Well, according to the data Riker pulls in the book, it resulted in a 34% rise in violent crime. Riker's argument is that this is state-sanctioned infantilization. When you treat violent criminals like misunderstood toddlers, you get more violence. When you ban red pens in schools because corrections trigger anxiety, which is another real thing mentioned in the text, you aren't raising resilient adults, you're raising permanent children.
Yeah, he calls that the war on competence.
It does, and he says it's enforced heavily through language. Riker calls it the gynocracy of language. Think about the phrase, "I feel unsafe."
Oh man, I hear that constantly in HR meetings, on social media, even in just casual conversation.
Riker describes that specific phrase as a guillotine. It's a linguistic trick that totally bypasses due process.
How so?
Well, if you say, "I am in danger," we need evidence of a threat. We need to see the knife or the threatening email or the fist. But if you say, "I feel unsafe," that's an irrefutable internal state.
So the accusation becomes a verdict because you can't disprove a feeling.
Precisely. It destroys careers and reputations without a shred of evidence, because in the maternal matrix, feelings are facts. If a woman feels uncomfortable, a man has committed a crime. Logic is completely subordinate to emotion.
It's a total inversion of how we used to understand truth. But I want to pivot to the economic side of this because this is where the whole catabolic idea really shows up in the numbers. Riker drops a statistic that blew my mind. He says women control 80% of consumer spending in the U.S.
80%. They are the primary engine of the consumer economy. But here's the kicker. They also hold the majority of the debt.
Which brings us to the concept of girl math. Now, I've seen this on TikTok, and it's usually framed as a joke, right? Like, oh, if I return a $50 dress and buy a $50 candle, the candle is basically free.
Right. But Riker argues it's not a joke. It's a symptom. Girl math creates a framework where spending money is reframed as investing in emotional well-being, and he goes much deeper into this with the pink tax.
Okay, the pink tax. Usually you hear feminists argue that products for women, like razors or shampoo, cost more, and that's a form of oppression. The price of being a woman, basically.
Right, we've all heard that argument, but Riker flips that completely on its head. He argues women aren't victims of higher prices, they are the architects of them.
Architects. How does that work?
Because they aren't actually paying for utility. A generic dollar razor cuts hair just as well as the pink one. They are paying for identity. They are paying for the packaging, the branding, the feeling of status.
It's utility versus identity.
But exactly. If you demand a lifestyle product to validate your self-worth, the market will charge you a premium for it. The market is just responding to the demand for emotional validation.
And this feeds into what he calls the parasitic dynamic, which is a pretty heavy term.
It is, but he backs it up with economic data regarding net tax contributions. His argument is that modern feminism encourages a lifestyle where women demand financial independence on one hand, but rely heavily on male productivity or state transfers, what he calls the daddy state, to actually fund a lifestyle of self-care and consumption.
He mentions the Diderot effect in this context. Can we break that down? Because I think everyone listening has felt this, even if they don't know the name for it.
Yeah, it's the consumption spiral. The term comes from the French philosopher Denis Diderot.
Oh.
He lived a very simple life until he was gifted this fancy scarlet robe.
Okay.
Suddenly, his old wooden desk looked incredibly cheap next to this beautiful robe. So he bought a new desk, then the rug looked dirty next to the desk, so he bought a new rug, then new paintings.
So one purchase forces the next. The identity needs constant maintenance.
Exactly. And Riker argues this rampant consumption is filling a very specific void, the void left by rejecting motherhood. He says when you reject the biological drive to create life, to sacrifice for the future, you replace it with the drive to consume goods in the present. It's trying to fill a spiritual hole with a credit card.
And that consumption isn't just about buying purses or shoes, it's about consuming institutions too. We have to talk about the workplace. DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Riker calls this the death of merit.
He actually goes further than that. He refers to it as satanic inversion.
Satanic inversion. Okay, unpack that because that sounds almost biblical.
He means it turns the entire moral universe upside down. Good becomes bad. Logic becomes a violence. Feelings become facts. And the primary enforcer of this inversion in the corporate world is human resources. Riker provides data showing that 73% of HR roles are held by women.
So the corporation stops being a place of production, like making widgets or writing code, and literally becomes a therapy clinic.
That's the exact metaphor he uses. If a man is efficient, direct, and focused on the objective traits that used to be celebrated, traits that actually build bridges and software, he's now labeled as exhibiting toxic masculinity.
Just because he's not nice enough. Because he didn't ask everyone how their weekend was before starting the meeting.
Because he's prioritizing the object over the subject. He cares more about the result than the feelings of the people in the room. Riker uses the famous example of that Google engineer who was fired a few years back.
Oh, right. The guy who wrote the memo.
Yes. He presented a data-driven case regarding biological differences and hiring practices. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't abusive. He cited peer-reviewed studies.
Right, he was just stating facts.
But he was fired because his facts made people feel unsafe. Riker calls this maternal tribalism. Competence is displaced by the desperate need to protect the emotional harmony of the group.
And the consequences are real. We aren't just talking about hurt feelings in an office. We're talking about the collapse of entire systems.
Riker points to massive failures in female-led leadership, citing examples like the Theranos fraud with Elizabeth Holmes. The argument the book makes is that emotional governance kills companies and nations because it cannot make the hard, logical choices required for actual survival. It prioritizes the vibe over reality.
Speaking of survival, we have to get into the darkest part of the book. This is the war on fatherhood. And I think for a lot of you listening, this is going to be the part that hits home the hardest.
Yeah, this is where the red pill aspect really stops being theoretical and gets intensely personal.
Riker talks about the erasure of dads, and the legal bias he outlines is staggering. He cites figures from the text showing mothers getting custody in 83 to 96% of cases, depending on the jurisdiction.
And he brings up this concept of daddy deportation.
What exactly is that?
It's a term used in Australia. It refers to how the legal system can strip fathers of their rights so efficiently, it's as if they've been deported from their own families. They become visitors, they become payers, but not fathers.
That's brutal.
But it goes way beyond custody. Riker links this to broad demographics. He discusses the 1 billion aborted children.
That number is just hard to wrap your head around. 1 billion.
He calls it catabolic feminism at its absolute peak. We're literally consuming the future, the next generation, to fuel the current ego and lifestyle of the present. It's a total refusal to sacrifice for the future, which he says is the definition of a dying civilization. A society that eats its young has no tomorrow.
And for the men who do want to be fathers, he talks about the weaponized body, the way IVF is used today.
Right, it's a financial hostage situation. Women using IVF to conceive without any male involvement or blocking fathers from seeing their children while still demanding child support through the courts. Riker argues that the body itself has become a tool for leverage.
And if you try to fight back, if you speak up and say, hey, this isn't right,
then you run headfirst into GSR.
Gossip, shame, rally.
It's the hive mind mechanism. Riker described how women use whisper networks, private group chats, social circles, those things. Are we dating the same guy groups online to completely destroy a man's reputation without him even knowing what he's accused of?
It's covert warfare.
It is. Men traditionally fight overtly. Confrontation, debate, maybe a fist fight, and then you shake hands. GSR is a covert way to enforce conformity. If you step out of line, the swarm attacks. You are shamed, you are isolated, and the group rallies to protect the accuser. It effectively neutralizes any male resistance within the social sphere.
It sounds hopeless, honestly. When you stack the legal system, the HR departments, and the social dynamics all against men, it feels like checkmate. It feels like the board is completely tilted. But Riker doesn't actually end there. He talks about the male resistance. He says biology is biting back.
This is what he calls the male exit. You're seeing it everywhere with men going galt.
Going galt, that's the Atlas Shrugged reference. Striking from the system. Withdrawing your talent and your labor.
Exactly. Riker shares this fascinating story of Dan from Portland.
Tell us about Dan.
Dan was a senior engineer. 6-figure salary, high status, lived in a big condo, but he was just miserable. He was tired of the endless HR seminars, tired of the dating market where he felt exploited entirely for his paycheck. So he just checked out.
Just walked away.
He quit his job, sold the condo, moved into a customized van, and started doing remote contract work, just enough to survive.
He completely refused to fuel the machine.
He refused to participate in a system that hates him. But Riker says it's not just about checking out, it's about checking into something else, building what he calls strong spaces.
Contrast that with safe spaces for me.
Well, the left wants safe spaces, places where you are protected from reality. Men are building strong spaces, which are places where you are forced to confront reality. Riker gives some really great examples in the book, like the Dade School in Texas.
That's the mechanic, right? Dale Thompson.
Yeah, Dale Thompson. He's teaching boys to fix cars, unclog toilets, weld, and build things. But he's not just teaching trade skills, he's teaching self-reliance. He's teaching them that if the car doesn't start, you can't cancel the engine.
Right.
You can't tell the engine you feel unsafe. You actually have to fix it.
It's reintroducing the logic of the physical world, the world where physics simply doesn't care about your feelings.
Exactly. Riker also highlights Sons of Steel down in Brazil. It's an MMA gym that works with ex-cons. But it's not just about fighting, it's about discipline and faith. Or the Iron Dad camping trips in Australia.
What are those?
These are spaces out in the bush where accountability is strictly enforced, not avoided. Where hierarchy is based entirely on competence, not victimhood.
So the solution isn't to try and fix the maternal matrix from the inside. We aren't trying to vote our way out of this.
No. Riker argues that the matrix is way too far gone. It's catabolic. It's already eating itself. The solution is to build parallel structures, to create pockets of sanity where the masculine order can survive, while the rest of the structure basically collapses under the weight of its own delusions.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener, right now? What is the big takeaway?
The epilogue of the book really drives it home. Riker concludes that men are finally waking up. He argues that the masculine order, which has been relentlessly demonized as patriarchy, isn't tyranny. It is the fundamental structure required for civilization to exist at all.
It's the walls of the house.
It's the walls. Without it, you get the wind, the rain, and eventually the collapse. You get the nursery, and then you get the grave.
Man, this book is heavy. It is a lot to take in. It challenges pretty much every single narrative we see in the mainstream media today.
It really does. And Riker leaves us with this final provocation. He says the West isn't dying from external threats like war or aliens or climate change. It's dying from an autoimmune disorder called feminism.
An autoimmune disorder.
The body is attacking its own immune system, and the only way out is for men to stop apologizing for existing and reclaim their minds.
That is a powerful place to land. Look, we've just scratched the surface of the data, the history, and the economic theory in this book. We touched on the pink tax and GSR, but there are entire chapters on the history of marriage laws and the psychology of victimhood that we didn't even have time to get to today.
Absolutely. If you really want to understand the full scope of what Riker is saying, you need to read the source material. You need to see the charts and the citations for yourself. You need the ammo.
So here is your marching order. Go to Amazon Kindle, go to Google Playbooks, and buy Feminism Lies and Lies Girl Math right now. Support the work if you want the truth to keep coming out.
And if you want the uncensored truth directly from the source, you have to follow the author at Conrad and Riker on Substack. That's where the conversation continues, completely unfiltered.
Do it. And hey, before you sign off, make sure you like and subscribe to The Deep Dive. We're going to keep bringing you this stuff no one else will talk about. Thanks for listening.
Stay awake.